I came home from the hospital and found my things in boxes. My son said we need the space. I took the boxes and left. The next week the mortgage company called them. Family story. I still remember the exact smell of that hallway when the taxi dropped me off. Hospital disinfectant clung to my clothes and the little plastic bag they gave me with my discharge papers. My knee was stiff from the replacement surgery, and every step up the front walk of the house on Maple Ridge felt longer than the last. The porch light was on even though it was only 3 in the afternoon. That should have been my first clue something was off. I pushed the door open with my free hand and the living room looked different. The couch was pushed against the far wall. My reading chair was gone. In the middle of the floor sat 4 cardboard boxes sealed with packing tape. My name was written on the side of each one in thick black marker. The handwriting belonged to my daughter-in-law. Brandon came out of the kitchen wiping his hands on a dish towel. He looked tired, older than 34 somehow. Behind him I could hear the television playing a cartoon for the kids. "Mom," he said, and the word landed flat. "We need to talk." I set the hospital bag on the nearest box. "What's all this?" He glanced at the boxes like they had appeared on their own. "We need the space. Megan's sister is moving in next month with the baby. The guest room has to be ready. Your things were taking up too much room." I stared at him. 3 weeks earlier I had been lying in a hospital bed while he signed the paperwork that let me stay here during recovery. He had driven me to every pre-op appointment. He had told the nurses he would take care of everything. Now the everything included packing my life into 4 boxes without asking. "You packed my clothes while I was under anesthesia? We didn't want you climbing stairs on that knee." It was practical. Megan appeared in the doorway holding their youngest on her hip. She did not look at me. She looked at the boxes. I asked the only question that mattered. "Where am I supposed to go?" Brandon rubbed the back of his neck. "You've got Social Security. You can get a little place. Or stay with Aunt Carol for a while. We just can't keep the extra room open anymore. Money's tight. The mortgage is already more than we planned." That last sentence stuck. The mortgage. The house I had signed for 12 years ago when Brandon's first marriage fell apart and he needed a place with a yard for the kids. My name was still on the title. My credit had secured the loan. I had made the first 3 years of payments myself until he got steady work again. After that I kept a quiet secondary account that covered shortfalls so the late notices never came. I did not remind him of any of that. I just nodded once, picked up the first box, and carried it to the curb. The second box followed. The third. The fourth. My knee burned the entire time. Brandon stood on the porch and watched. He did not offer to help. When the last box was outside, I went back in for my purse and the hospital bag. The house already felt like it belonged to someone else. I called a rideshare. The driver helped load the boxes into the trunk without asking questions. I gave him the address of a budget motel 2 towns over, the kind that still took cash and did not ask for a credit card. That night I sat on a thin mattress and stared at the ceiling while the ice machine down the hall rattled every 20 minutes. My knee ached. My chest ached worse. The next morning I walked to the nearest bank branch and closed the secondary account that had been quietly covering the mortgage shortfalls. I left the primary payment account alone for 1 more cycle. Then I waited. 7 days later my phone rang while I was eating a microwave dinner in the motel room. It was Brandon. His voice was higher than usual. "Mom, the mortgage company just called the house. They're saying the payment didn't clear. They're talking about late fees and a possible notice." "What did you do?" I set the plastic fork down. "I didn't do anything. I left. You said you needed the space. You know the loan is still in your name. They have your old number as the primary contact, but they called here because the address is still listed." Megan is freaking out. The kids heard the whole conversation. I looked at the 4 boxes stacked against the motel wall. One of them still had a corner of my old quilt sticking out where the tape had come loose. "I paid that mortgage for years when you couldn't," I said. "I kept it current so the kids would have a stable roof. You packed my things while I was in the hospital and told me to leave. So I left." Silence stretched on the other end. Then he said, "We didn't mean it like that. We just needed room. You can come back. We'll figure something out." "I already figured something out," I told him. "I closed the account that was covering the difference. The next payment is on you. All of it." He started to argue about interest rates and how much the payment had jumped and how Megan's sister needed a place after her own divorce. I let him talk until he ran out of words. Then I said, "The title is still in my name. The loan is still in my name. If you want the house, refinance it into yours. Until then, the mortgage company will keep calling whoever is living there." I hung up before he could answer. That night the motel room felt smaller. I unpacked one box just far enough to find the photo album from when Brandon was little. There was a picture of the two of us standing in front of the empty lot where the house would later be built. He was 10 and missing a front tooth. I was still working 2 jobs and dreaming about giving him something solid. The next afternoon I received a certified letter at the motel. The mortgage company had already begun the process of updating contact information. They wanted written confirmation of the occupancy change. I filled out the form in careful block letters and mailed it back. I listed my new temporary address and noted that I was no longer residing at the property. 2 days later Brandon showed up at the motel. He stood in the parking lot beside his truck with his hands in his pockets. He looked like he had not slept. "They're sending a notice," he said. 30 days. Megan's sister already canceled her plans. "We can't afford this place without the help you were giving." I stayed in the doorway of the room. "Then sell it. Or refinance. Or let it go back. Those are your choices now." He stared at the asphalt. "I didn't think you'd actually stop the payments. I didn't think you'd pack my life into boxes while I was under the knife." We stood there until the afternoon heat made the parking lot shimmer. Finally he said, "The kids keep asking where Grandma went. Tell them Grandma needed space too." He left without another word. I watched the truck pull out and turn toward the highway that led back to Maple Ridge. I stayed at the motel for 3 more weeks while the paperwork moved. The mortgage company called me once to confirm the change of address. They were polite and professional. They did not ask why a 62-year-old woman was living out of 4 cardboard boxes after knee surgery. I did not offer an explanation. On the day the notice of default would have been posted, I received a text from Brandon. It was a photo of a for sale sign planted in the front yard of the house. Underneath it he had written, "Listing goes live tomorrow." I did not reply. That evening I opened the last box. Inside was the quilt my own mother had made the year I got married. The stitches were still strong. I spread it across the motel bed and sat on the edge of the mattress with my repaired knee stretched out in front of me. Outside, traffic moved past on the main road. Somewhere a few miles away, a house that had once been mine was preparing to become someone else's problem. I turned off the lamp and listened to the ice machine rattle again. The sound no longer bothered me. I had my boxes. I had the title still in my name until the sale closed. And for the first time since the hospital doors had slid shut behind me, I had the quiet certainty that no one else would decide what space I was allowed to take up.